Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are delving through the profile of Denzel Boston, senior out of Washington. We're going to go through his profile, strengths and weaknesses, usage, some box scores against ranked competition, some of his advanced stats, talk about where he might go in terms of real-life draft capital and specific team fits, and then finally where we should probably be ranking him in Dynasty. And so watch to the end of this video, and you should have a pretty good idea. Now, when you take a look at his projected height and weight, combined with his projected 40 time, we see that both PFF and NFL Draft Buzz have him listed at 6'4" and 209 pounds. Now, being 6'4" in and of itself would be 89th percentile among prospects, while being 209 pounds would be 69th percentile. So he's both large in the sense of his height, but he's also not, particularly skinny either. And so that's going to help him have a pretty good frame for somebody his size. Now, he's projected to run a 4.52 40-yard dash time per NFL Draft Buzz. That in and of itself would be 44th percentile, but for somebody that's this big, that would be a perfectly reasonable height and weight adjusted speed score. So if that ends up happening, there's nothing to be worried about there. Now, when we take a look at his production profile, you will notice that in his true freshman and sophomore seasons, he didn't really do much. While he was playing behind the likes of Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk, and Rome Odunze, all three of whom were selected in the 2024 NFL Draft. And so I would hold that against somebody if they weren't, playing behind NFL draftees, in front of them. But when he was able to see the field in his true junior season, he had 98 targets, 63 receptions, 834 receiving yards, and 9 receiving touchdowns to go along with a PFF score of 77.5 in terms of his receiving grade, and then stepped it up a little bit in some aspects, but this season finished with 86 targets, 56 receptions, 755 receiving yards, and 10 receiving touchdowns to go along with a new career best PFF receiving grade of 87.1. Now, he was working with Desmond Williams, who is a promising dual threat quarterback with pretty solid accuracy. So his quarterback play was not a huge detriment here. In terms of key injuries, he's really had two this season, an ankle sprain, which isn't really anything you'd worry about for the long term, but he did have sports hernia surgery as well. But once again, no multi-ligament knee injuries, no, recurring issues to the same part of his body. And so overall, injuries aren't really something I'm worried about with him in particular. And so taking a look at some box scores against ranked competition here, we'll get into some advanced stats here in a minute. Against number 1 OSU, he went 3 for 26, no touchdown, essentially not making a giant impact there. Now, one thing I want to mention is he was used as a vertical X with some slot work for sure, but that role in and of itself doesn't always project to a bunch of 12 for 120 games. You generally see a little bit less volume, and the looks aren't nearly as efficient. But against number 23 Illinois, he went 10 for 153 and 1, and then against number 6 Oregon, while he was held to 4 receptions for 25 total yards, he did end up scoring twice, so he definitely was a big part of the reason. I mean, he was the reason they ended up scoring 14 points, right? So not necessarily 3 dominant performances against ranked competition, 1 dominant performance, 1 solid performance where he was able to score twice for his team, and then 1 game against Ohio State where he was essentially erased. Now, taking a look at some advanced stats here, I took a look at FBS wide receivers with 50 or more targets. That was a sample size of over 200 players here. Boston ran 333 routes on the season, which was 97.9% of the team routes. That is the highest route participation I've seen so far. There is, without a doubt, he was a starting wide receiver for them, and he specifically played X. Now, when we take a look at the slot and boundary snap percentages, he played 18.2% of the time in the slot and 80.9% out wide as a boundary wide receiver. I would hope at the NFL level, he were to see more of a 25 to 30% slot snap percentage and around a 70 to 75% boundary percentage to be good for us in fantasy. Typically, these 80-20 type of players in terms of their usage, more boundary, aren't the best for us in fantasy, especially vertical X's, because the nature of the role isn't advantageous. You're getting low quality looks for the most part deep down the field. You're not getting moved around to create mismatches against smaller corners. But Washington did move him into the slot and take advantage of his mismatch ability. And I'll get into some of his strengths and weaknesses. So he did see a good amount of targets from the slot, to be fair. It just, the overall usage wasn't as good as I would ideally like for somebody specific to fantasy relevance. In terms of his yards per route run, his 2.27 is tied for 72nd. not particularly remarkable. His PFF receiving grade of 87.1 is 6th for what it's worth. His yak perception of 4.4 is tied for 164th, and his 7 missed tackles are tied for 123rd. He's not really, incredible after the catch. He'll get what's in front of him. He can break a tackle, but that's not going to be a big part of his game, in my opinion. But here is what is going to be a big part of his game. He had a 70% contested catch percentage, 7 out of 10 targets per PFF. He is dominant above the rim. He will come down with the football, and he will moss the crap out of you. In terms of his targets and targets per game, he has 86 on the season at 7.8 per game. That's actually not too bad for a boundary X receiver in terms of most of his usage. His 56 receptions at 5.1 per game is relatively efficient when you contextualize that with the role in which he's been playing for them. 755 receiving yards at 68.6 per game is an absolutely fine number there. But he does have 10 receiving touchdowns on the season at 0.9 per game. He's played 11 games. So he's very good in contested catch situations, and he does seem to be a touchdown magnet. And I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members. Thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Mage Jack, Infamy MTG, AOYOB, The Dawn, and Any Buckeye. Thank you guys. I'm doing this full time now, and without your support, this would not be possible. If you'd like to become a member, I'm going to leave a link in both the comment section and description of this video. You'll receive not only, but including access to a Discord where we have a channel where we have NFL and college football talk, as well as a channel where we have fantasy football talk, and a third channel where we laugh at poor trade offers that we've been offered in fantasy football. But if you'd like to, you can always DM me with private, questions if you don't wish for it to be known by any community members. But you'll also get help with building your fantasy football teams every year. I'll use wins above replacement, as well as just looking at the general lineup and scoring settings to help you with your teams each year. I'll help you with trades that are advantageous based on those factors as well. You'll be part of a fun and growing active community. You'll not only receive access to videos early guaranteed, but you'll also have the ability to ask for personal videos that you and only you can view. Or potentially, if you'd like something to be shown on the channel, you'll have preferential treatment there as well. So please consider becoming a member. I'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video. And while some All-22 clips display some of what I'm going to be mentioning here, I'm going to read you an around 3-minute synopsis in which I've written about Denzel Boston. So Denzel Boston is a senior from the Washington Huskies who I think best projects to have true positional versatility at the NFL level. He stands at a whopping 6'4" and 209 pounds and is a physically dominant player above the rim. He'll be one of the better blocking receivers the minute he steps foot on an NFL field, capable of knocking edge players and linebackers to the ground with nasty force. I think he does lack the burst to immediately gain traditional separation against man like, Jordan Tyson does, but he does utilize leverage and physicality to get open consistently and has the build-up speed to separate both vertically and horizontally. He runs a fantastic fade route, consistently wins on double moves down the field, and has shown an ability to win on dig and 9 routes. And so the traditional X wide receiver route tree, and he also drops his weight pretty well for comeback routes. So I think that the traditional X wide receiver route tree is already within his skill set. His hands are a huge strength, and he will sky up and above defenders for the ball with remarkable consistency, as evidenced by his 70% contested catch rate this season. Now, he does struggle at times against press, and I think the lack of immediate burst plays a factor there, combined with a need to improve his variety of releases and hand placement to defeat press. The hand placement and varying of release aspects are absolutely coachable, and, perhaps he can improve his burst as well. I don't want to limit him in that regard. I think he will be able to develop into a good to great X receiver, but I think he would be a fantastic Z or slot immediately, as he works well against off coverage. He bullies smaller defenders and is quite fluid and able to drop his weight well for a player of his size, combined with his understanding of beating zone and the consistency with which he runs his routes in terms of reducing wastage of movement and overcoming his lack of tremendous burst off the line with suddenness and an ability to break after making a cut. He isn't remarkable after the catch, but will get what's in front of him, and I would liken him to former collegiate teammate Roma Dunze in that regard. He has a fantastic vertical jump and will high point passes with consistency, making him project to be a huge asset in the red zone for his future team. Now, this type of receiver isn't going to be for everyone, mostly those who desire quick separation with burst, which is a pretty common theme around the Dynasty community, and for good reason. There are some explosive and good players who fit that criteria. But he brings a lot to the table, and I think he will be successful at the NFL level. He has the upside to be a true number one wide receiver at the NFL level if he masters press coverage and can more consistently get into his route phase against it. Now, taking a look at his projected draft capital, NFL Draft Buzz has him listed as a late round 1 prospect. I really hope he gets that draft capital, but if he gets early round 2, that's not a death sentence by any means for a wide receiver. And I think that that's pretty fair. I think he's deserving of late first round draft capital, so wouldn't shock me if he tests a little bit better at the combine than projected. Maybe he moves up too. So once again, a brief summarizations of his strengths and areas to improve. And there are more strengths and more areas to potentially improve, but I think some of these are the more important ones. In terms of his strengths, he has remarkable body control, and he combines that with his ball tracking. It's one of these things with these vertical X wide receivers, you just have to have it. If you don't have the ball tracking ability to find where the ball is deep down the field, and you don't have the body control to make amazing catches, especially in crowded spaces, and adding a contested catch ability, which he absolutely possesses to that, and you're unable to gain separation, like Jamison Williams with just burner speed, it's not going to work out as well for you. So it's very good that he does have these traits. He's fluid. You see it on the double moves. He had a stutter go that was pretty remarkable on that All-22 film, and he's versatile. In my opinion, he should have absolute positional versatility to be an X, Z, or slot at the NFL level. And I think that I think he's going to be good regardless as to where his team plays him, to be honest with you. But I would hope for his sake that he's not just purely put in a vertical X role, because the role in and of itself would be a little bit limiting for fantasy. And I think he's capable of doing more than that. Now, potential areas to improve, he needs to defeat press coverage more consistently. He does show that he can do it, but the burst off the line is another thing that kind of coincides with this. I think that the lack of immediate burst off the line, combined with a need to improve his hand technique and potentially play strength, but I think that his blocking demonstrates he's a pretty physical player, and his contested catch ability, I'm not really sure that the strength is the biggest issue. I think hand placement is a big thing, but I also think varying his releases, all three of these really coincide with each other, because if he can defeat a man press coverage more consistently, I don't think there's going to be any limitations to his game. And so, talking about a couple of pro comparisons, I think there's a case that his upside could be that of Drake London. He once again does need to improve his release packages, his hand placement against press coverage, and potentially get a little bit more bursty if that's possible offline of scrimmage. But the snap down, the physicality, the contested catch ability, the ability to track the ball deep down the field and just be significantly bigger and utilize that against defenders, and create mismatches in the slot. That's what Drake London's been doing a lot recently. I think there is an upside case where he reaches that level of talent, but I think that it's pretty likely he's a Courtland Sutton type of player who's an above average X wide receiver, somebody who's kind of similar to Drake London in some ways, a big bodied receiver that will go up, snatch the football, can defeat press coverage, but is, albeit a little bit not quite as dynamic as Drake London, and you see that in the production. But I think that he's going to be a good NFL player, and I think that depending on the team in which he's drafted by, the quarterback play, the role in which they ask him to play, that he could be a very good player. I mean, you'll see comparisons to players like Mike Pittman, who's more of a big Z, if that makes sense, and a slot player than necessarily an X for the Colts. But all big-bodied players that are good against zone coverage, and definitely have a lot of strengths to their game. In terms of where I think that the community will probably, and the dynasty community will probably have him ranked, I think they'll have him probably in the wide receiver 25 to 30 range, with a little bit of room to go up or down depending on the landing spot and official draft capital. Where I would take him in rookie drafts, I think there's a case potentially, depending once again on where he's drafted and in terms of both the draft capital and the team fit and quarterback play, that he could be a mid to late first round pick for us in dynasty rookie drafts. Now, a couple of possible fits. If he goes more in the mid first, and once again, at the time of me recording this video, these teams have these picks. It's going to go up and down a little bit by the end of the season for sure. But I think the Buccaneers, I think that they could potentially look to replace Mike Evans, who, he's 32. He could retire after the season. I think that would be a pretty good fit with Baker Mayfield. I think the Bills at 24th overall, I think they could actually give Josh Allen an X wide receiver. in Denzel Boston, and I think that could be a good fit for them. But he could also have the positional versatility to not necessarily have to be an X at all times. I think the Patriots at 30th overall, I think he could bump Boutte into potentially, a role at Z or slot and allow Boston to be your X. I think that would be fantastic pairing him with Drake May. Drake May is one of the better zone beating quarterbacks, and I think Denzel Boston's strengths against zone would coincide well with him, along with a big bodied frame. Not that Drake May needs a big bodied receiver to hit him because his accuracy is crazy. But I think it'd be a good fit. And the Broncos at 32nd overall, potentially with Cortland Sutton, somebody who I compared him to, obviously. Getting a little bit older, they could potentially look to replace him with a cheaper option. I think that Denzel Boston could be a good fit with the Broncos under Sean Payton, pairing with Bo Nix. And I think that Boston works well in scramble drill as well, which we see a good amount from Bo Nix. And so I think that'd be a pretty good pairing. So what are your thoughts about Denzel Boston? Let me know below in the comment section. I think there's a ton of upside with this guy. I think that he's a pretty safe player in my opinion. I would be pretty shocked if he busts. He's just so well-rounded, has such a good frame, plays up to his size, is a good route runner. I really would be surprised if he busts. But once again, let me know below in the comment section. Are there any strengths or weaknesses that perhaps I didn't even mention that you think are worthy of noting? Let me know below in the comment section. Once again, if you like this video and would be so kind, I would really appreciate it if you would support me via Patreon. I'm doing this full time now, and your support would be greatly appreciated. Thank you to all my Patreon members. If you cannot or do not wish to, if you could just like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment below, I would really appreciate it. Yeah. Anyways, thanks and have a good day.